So let's enter one to see what it looks like. We'll hit the plus button up top and go over to a purchase order and enter one of these items. Let's just set up a new vendor as we go. So I'm just going to say vendor 1 again. So we'll just set up a new vendor. I'm just going to keep it there. So we're going to requesting. Now, if we're going to send this out, because it is a purchase order, it's a request form. So remember that these forms are data input forms typically used to help us generate our financial statements. This one doesn't impact the financial statements, but some of the forms also go out to customers or vendors, this being one of those forms. It would go out to, of course, the vendor as a request form. So therefore, if you had an email, that would make it easy to send out the email to the customer. So purchase order status, is it open versus closed, and so on and so forth. Obviously, at this point in time, it's going to be open because we're creating the purchase order. It hasn't been fulfilled. They haven't actually given us the items yet. Okay, so then we have the vendor information. If there was a mailing address and so on, we would have entered that when we entered the vendor, the ship to. So now we're thinking here that we're going to ship it to us. So that means it's picking up our address here, which obviously would be our warehouse or something like that if we're imagining where we're shipping over like the 1,000 teacups. But you might imagine that we're going to have it shipped directly to a customer. So, and again, that would be another kind of specialty type of business where you're saying, I'm going to make the order, requesting it from my vendor, not shipping it to me, but shipping it directly to the customer, in which case you can choose up here the customers, and then that'll change the shipping address going there. Purchase order date, we're just going to keep the date that we have the ship via if appropriate. We're not going to add any tag. We have another course or presentation on tags. Now down here, we have the purchase order with the categories and the items again with these two drop downs. Now, if you were not using a perpetual inventory system, you might just use the categories, assigning it, say, to inventory as your just general ledger account. But usually if you're using the purchase order, you have a full service system and are going to be using the items then, and we'll set up our inventory items so that when I do the purchase order, I'm requesting the teacups in our case, and that means that it's not actually going to record the teacups when I record the purchase order, but when I convert the purchase order to a bill after having received the teacups, then I'm going to record not only the increase in inventory with regards to the dollar amount, but also the units or amount of teacups, possibly using a flow assumption of some kind, like a first in, first out, or a last in, first out. And also in order to not have people steal the inventory, that's FIFO. We have a FIFO inventory, LIFO, and we also have a FAFO inventory system, which I just made up myself. It's called F around and find out, the FAFO inventory. It's one of the most effective inventory systems to reduce the theft in there. It's forbidden in California, but if you actually don't want your inventory stolen, you use the FAFO inventory. Anyway, you put some dogs out there. Anyway, that's not a real inventory system. I thought it was funny. It's FAFO. FIFO, average, weighted average, and FAFO. F around and find out. I'll get my hound dogs. Sick the hounds on them. Sick the hounds on. Okay. Anyway, so now we're going to say, let's add an inventory product here. We're going to say this is going to be inventory item number 1, let's say. And so I'm just going to set up an inventory item. We'll get more into setting up inventory items at a later time when we set up the new company file, second half of the course. But let's add one for our practice purchase order here. So we've got the inventory name. I'm just going to copy this, which is going to just be generic inventory item 1. Let's tab through this thing. Boom, 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 tab. No category. I'm going to initial quantity on hand. I'm going to say is 0 as of, I'm going to say that day, and then reorder point. Let's put at 0 again. The inventory asset account is going to be the just inventory when we purchase it. That's going to be what we're going to record the dollar amount to. Description item will be the inventory item. That's what's going to show here when I put the item in. The sales price, let's say, is $100, and it's going to go to the sales of product inventory. Sales tax, if it's applicable, which is a type of usage tax, and then the description, and then the cost. Let's say it costs $75. So we're going to buy them. Well, it's just, 75. We're going to buy them for 75 and sell them for 100. And then the cost of goods sold is the expense account that will be impacted, not here when we buy them, but when we sell them. To cost of goods sold, the vendor, let's just put vendor one, and see if it lets me record that, save it. So there it is. Okay. So now we have put this on the system. Let's say that we're going to buy, let's just say 2 of those items. So it's going to cost me $150. Notice that we're going to sell them, we said, for 100 each, but we're going to buy them for the 75, and we're tracking it basically real time. Now, I could put a customer here. You might ask, why would I put a customer when this is going to my vendor? I'm buying it. The customer would be for someone that when I'm selling to the customer. But you might say, hey, look, I'd like to put the customer here because that will remind me when I actually get the teacups that I ordered them specifically for a particular customer. So in other words, if a customer comes in and says, I want these whatever inventory item number 1, and we're like, okay, we're going to order that for you specifically, I can put on the purchase order that the customer name, not because the vendor one, the person we're sending the purchase order, cares on their end, but because when I receive the inventory, this will remind me to turn around then and create an invoice billing the customer for the items that I now have. All right, and then we have your message. So if we want to put a message to the vendor, we can add that. We can add a memo. We can add attachments if we need to. Clear, we can print it. So if you want to take a look at what it looks like, we could see the print item here and see what it looks like from the, so this is the data input form. This is what it will actually look like in the email. So there we have that. You can, when you get into the custom forms, I think we have another course or section on that. You might customize this form given the fact, just for the look and feel of it, that it is going out to particular vendors. We have the more item, which once again, copy, delete, and add audit history. We can save it. We can then hit the drop down here, save and new, and save and close, which is what we're on here, or save and send if we were sending the actual email out. I'm going to save and close it. What will it do when I save and close it? It's not going to record anything to the financial statements, but it will give me a trackable item internally that I can look at. So I'm going to say, let's save and close it.